If either of your company's board, your audit committee, or authorized officers, whether it be the CFO, the CEO, the controller, conclude that any of your previously issued financials should no longer be relied upon because of an error, or the company is notified by the independent auditor that disclosure should be made or actions taken to prevent reliance on any previously issued financials, you need to file a Form 8K with the SEC within 4 business days today on Zippy Point. I'm Brock Romanek, and I'm a big fan of use. So if your financials are unreliable, that's a big deal, a huge deal. Item 4.02 of Form 8K is essentially one of 2 flavors. 402A deals with the circumstances in which the company itself concludes that its financials are unreliable. And then 402B is when the company's auditors, the independent auditors, decide that the financials are unreliable. Section 4610 of CorpFin's Financial Reporting Manual, a great manual if you've never seen it before, contains some guidance in this area. The manual is up on the SEC's website. Let me note this right at the top. As noted in that Financial Reporting Manual, a former auditor may be the source of your bad news. It doesn't have to be your current auditor. So firing your auditor does not solve your obligation to file a Form 8K under Item 402. What to disclose? When it's the company that decides that the financials are unreliable, 3 things should be disclosed in that Item 402 8K. 1, the date that the company concluded that the financials should no longer be relied upon, and you can identify the financials in the years for the periods covered that should no longer be relied upon. 2, a description of the facts that underline the conclusion to the extent that you know that at the time. And 3, whether the audit committee or the full board, in the absence of the audit committee or the authorized officers, discuss the disclosed matters with the independent auditor. If it's the independent auditor that gives you the bad news, it's these 4 things that need to be disclosed. 1, the date on which the company was advised or notified of the bad news. 2, identification of the financials that should no longer be relied upon. 3, a brief description of the information provided by your independent auditor. And 4, a statement of whether the audit committee or the full board or the authorized officers discuss with the independent auditor the matters disclosed in the filing. As you can imagine, these 402 8Ks will draw the attention of the CorpFin staff as well as investors. The market's going to know it's going to impact your stock price most likely. So you're likely going to want to go beyond what's required in Item 402 to explain what you intend to do to fix this situation. And here's some good guidance from this Latham and Watkins blog about this type of scenario. Let's go through the related CorpFin staff interpretations. In this one, all Item 402 events must be reported on an 8K. They can't be staved off until the next 10Q or 10K, even if those periodic reports, their deadlines are the same deadlines as the 8K deadline. And then as noted in this CorpFin staff interpretation, if the company has previously announced under Item 402A that investors shouldn't rely on its financials, you don't have to file a second 8K when the auditor has come around and now also concludes that the non-reliance is appropriate. Of course, unless the auditor's conclusion relates to a matter different from the one that was triggered the company's 8K filing in the first place, its own conclusion. In other words, if you made an 8K under Item 402B, you don't have to make a second one under 402A unless the auditor's reasons for the errors in the financials is different. As noted in this CorpFin staff interp, you don't have to file an Item 402 8K if there are errors in the pro forma information. Item 402 does not apply to pro forma information. Of course, the error might require the company to go ahead and amend the SEC filing that had the original bad pro forma information. As noted in this CorpFin staff interp, if the company discovers an XBRL error, it can voluntarily provide non-reliance disclosure similar to that's required under 402 under either Item 701, a Reg FD, voluntary Form 8K, or an 801 voluntary Form 8K. Let's talk about the exhibits. The 8K should include any written notice received from the independent auditor as Exhibit 7 under that goes under Item 9.01 of 8K. That's where the exhibits for 8Ks go. And it's Exhibit 7 because of Item 601B7 of Regulation SK. That's what denotes that it's Exhibit number 7. Under Item 402C, when it's the auditor that determines that the financials should no longer be relied upon, the company must provide its auditors with a copy of the 8K disclosures no later than the 8K when it's filed. The company must then ask the auditor to provide a letter to the SEC as promptly as possible, stating whether it agrees with the company's 8K disclosure. And if it does not agree, if the auditor does not agree, explaining why not. The auditor's response letter then must need to be filed by amendment no later than 2 business days following the company's receipt of that letter from the auditor. So this letter is filed also as an Exhibit 7 to the amended 8K. So here's an example of that where the last paragraph indicates that the auditors have been given a copy of the 8K disclosure. That letter itself was filed as an Exhibit 7. That's fine, but I think the auditor's notice to the company should have been filed as an exhibit here too, I believe. And then let's parse a few other examples. This one is about typos and formatting problems during the Edgarization of the filing. This one is about management finding material weaknesses in its internal controls. This one is about improper accounting for a merger. And then here's one about improper accounting for liabilities associated with warrants. In this example, the company discloses the remedial actions it's taking to fix the problem, hiring outside advisors, and that the company will restate 3 10Qs as soon as practicable and reassess its internal and disclosure controls. So let me know what you think.